as soon as I start a business, I don't actually run it. I look for the person to run it from the very beginning. And what that has done for me is that has taught me that, hey, I don't have to worry about succession. And what I tell everybody who comes in is that you will replace yourself, whether you like it or not. This is just the way succession goes.
Are you ready to transform your life? This is a no-nonsense show helping immigrants like you create generational wealth, even while working full-time. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Saket Jain.
Migrate to Wealth listeners, today's episode has a little bit of background noise. I hope it doesn't get too annoying, but I wanted to make sure you knew that. Our production team and me personally, we put a lot of emphasis in making sure our episodes are of the highest quality before it gets to you. And unfortunately, we missed the mark on this specific episode. Regardless, I've made a decision to release the episode because Hamza's story is amazing. He's throwing a lot of great nuggets on the show, and I'm hoping that you'll benefit from that. So just bear with the background noise. Stick with it. I assure you that you're not going to regret listening to the entire show. Stay tuned again. Thanks again for listening in, and get ready to take notes. Thank you. Welcome back, Migrate to Wealth listeners. Today we have the pleasure of talking to my brother, Hamza Ali. Hamza, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm good. How are you?
We're good, man. We're good. We're just enjoying the sun in Raleigh. How's the weather on your side, man?
You know, weather has heated up a little bit. We had a little bit of a cold front come in a few days ago.
You guys are in Houston, right?
Yeah, we're in Houston. I'm in Houston. And we have this really weird weather situation where we can have all four seasons.
Seems like it's a new thing, right? You thought that Texas would be only summer, and now all of a sudden you see winters there too. That's insane.
Yeah, we've been also getting more amounts of snow, and it's just very interesting to see these things happen over the past couple of years.
Yeah, how long have you lived there?
I moved to the U.S. in 2013. Initially moved to Irvine. We'll get into details on that. And realized I can't do Irvine. Tight, but ended up moving to Houston 2014. So it's been about 9 years now.
Got it. Awesome, man. Awesome. Hey, you know what? We're actually launching the first question that we usually do. So, Hamza, we actually do things differently on this show. One of the big things we want to understand is really your life journey, your migration journey. The name of the show is Migrate to Wealth. And while the component of the wealth is very important for us, I think the really more important thing is a migration story. Because that's where, those are the stories where what inspired. And the mechanics of anything, as we were talking before the show went on air, that mechanics is very easy. It's really the inspiration that we want to leave people with. So with that note, Hamza, what is your migration story, buddy? I know you have done quite a lot of things and you've been very successful in whatever you have done. You're like gold on the Midas touch. So help us understand what got you to where you are.
So that's a great question. Actually, it's funny you mentioned the part of wealth and migration to wealth. I never actually thought that wealth would ever come into my story. But let me first walk you guys through the migration journey, what my journey looked like and what the process was like. I initially came here. I remember I lived in Dubai, by the way. So I'm not from Dubai, but I lived in Dubai, which means I'm not Emirati. So I don't have all that oil and gas money from a different country. I originally come from a country called Yemen. And prior to that, actually, my family was from India. So my family was moved to Yemen. That was, at the time of the British rule and all of that, people were getting moved around. So my family were one of those. And it's an interesting story because I turned 29, I remember, and I started working, by the way, since I was 17. So I was in real estate, 17 years old. I studied at...
And this was back in Dubai? You were in real estate? Got it.
So in Dubai, I studied at the American University in Dubai. And at the time, I remember Dubai had just opened up this beautiful complex, and it was what they called freehold, which meant for the first time ever in history, we had a Gulf country that was now allowing ownership of real estate to foreigners. This didn't exist in that area of the world for a lot of people that don't know that. And it was really cool because I got to experience this influx of people who were coming to study in Dubai, number one, because of course they wanted an education. And number two, because they wanted to invest in real estate, or, their parents wanted to invest in real estate.
Right.
So they would come in, wanting to buy real estate, and then these kids would somehow fall in love and end up educating themselves there. Now, the interesting part is, and what I see is when people travel from one place to another, the first thing they're looking for is investment opportunities, safe haven, how to make money, or how to offset expense. So maybe it might not be make money, but offset some expenses. And the first thing that would come to mind that was easy, low-hanging fruit was, hey, instead of paying for dorms, we're just going to buy an apartment. That apartment will appreciate over time. Our child would have continued their education for 4 years or 6 years, whatever it is. And then we can just sell it, make a profit, maybe offset some expenses, maybe even make a money and cover our kids' education. So I saw a lot of those type of deals. Now, because I was native, I speak 3 languages. I speak Hindi, I speak Arabic fluently, and I speak English. I was so I was able to cater to a lot of different demographics, and I was able to like kind of get my way in a lot of things just because of the language. It's so unique, right?
Of course.
And so it was really cool for me to be able to deal with investors from Pakistan, investors from India, investors from, Egypt, investors from other parts of the Middle East, Saudi, Qatar, Lebanon, Morocco, just everybody who was coming to Dubai at the time. I had a language, I could communicate, and I was very accustomed to the culture as well.
Mm-hmm.
So really quickly started my real estate journey there, educated myself. By the way, that's where I met my wife as well. So I met my wife a sophomore year.
Awesome.
The American University. We've been married 14 years. And then, as time progressed, I graduated, I remember, in '08. So '08 was the year I graduated from school. And I remember there were no jobs.
What a crazy time to graduate out of school, man.
Yeah. So
GFC.
no jobs.
Wow.
Jobs available, no opportunity. Luckily, I had this real estate thing that I was doing, which was fairly slow at that time as well. But I had some type of skill, I had the ability to sell something to someone, and that wouldn't go to waste at all. So '08, I realized, okay, I graduated, there's no jobs, real estate is dead. And for those of you who don't know, at that time, Dubai was a ghost town. So at that time, in order to stay in Dubai, either you had to be employed or you were an entrepreneur. If you were laid off, if you're, whatever situation, you had to leave the country. Or if you had bank debt and you were avoiding all of that, you had to fly out, you had to escape, basically.
Correct.
Right? And that's just what the rules and regulations were like. In order to get that residency, you had to be employed, you had to have an employer. Now, no employer means no residency. No residency means you need to get out. And so Dubai at that time was a ghost town. Luckily for me, I was able to maintain residency with companies that were, open at the time.
Right.
Through my father. So it was a pretty unique and weird time. And so the first thing I did is I educated myself. Okay, what are people doing? Where are people spending their money? And I quickly realized that the money was being spent by the Emirati population because they are the ones who have government jobs. And so I ventured down this hole as to where they're spending their money.
Right.
And I got a job with the royal family, actually. And
that's amazing. I did not know that part of your story. That's amazing.
So the job it was a very difficult job. It was basically communicating with American companies to fly out exotic car parts. So, you would have these exotic cars that would come to Dubai, and these cars needed to be modified. They needed accessories, but they also needed somebody who could speak the language, meaning they needed somebody who was fluent in Arabic who could communicate with them, and they needed somebody who was fluent in English who could communicate with the Americans. Because what was happening at the time was, as parts came in and they were getting ready to get installed on these expensive vehicles, it would be the wrong part, it would be the wrong item, it wouldn't fit, there were issues. And the barrier was basically the language, because these guys were communicating well, those guys were not sending the right stuff. And so... And
did you love cars?
I did.
Or you fell in love with cars after that?
I still love cars, man. Look at that. This is
I saw that. I'm like, that's beautiful, man.
So I still love cars, and I've always loved cars from as long as I've been growing up. Now, of course, that love has gone down more. Like, I don't like to work on them anymore as much as I used to. And I'd rather just own them and look at them, appreciate over time. So anyways, long story short, ended up working for them for a while. The economy recovered, tried to go back into real estate. But I then realized that, Dubai is probably not the best option at the time. I know it's a beautiful city and I nothing against it, but I wanted something bigger and I wanted something different for my family. So one day in 2013, I talked to my wife. At that time, I had 2 kids, very young kids. I want to say they were like less than 3 years old. So I know that both of them less than 3 years old. Decided I'm going to come to the US and kind of make something out of myself, sort of. Came here to the US initially, moved to Irvine, California, because based on all my research, Irvine was the closest city to Dubai, like beach city, high net worth, very nice things, and it's very like cookie cutter, master plan, sort of, very Dubai-like. And I had an uncle there who did real estate. So spent some time with him, decided, okay, he took me under his wing. He was really amazing at that. So he took me under his wing, decided that, okay, I'm going to go back home, pack up my stuff, come back.
But at that time, you did not bring your family at that time. Your family was in Dubai.
This is just me venturing out. I told my wife and kids, stay put. I'm going to go check it out, come back. So I remember I went back to Dubai. It was a short trip. It was less than a month. went back to Dubai, told my wife and kids about this whole like journey that I went through, and I think I can find success, and I know I don't have the money, but I can figure it out because I have this uncle and he would take me under his wing and I'll kind of figure things out. And then from there, really, things went south for me. So this is while I was in Dubai. Now, my uncle at that time suffered a stroke and he was like half paralyzed.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. He was at my sister's wedding, by the way, this last week. So he's walking with a cane.
So he's doing better. That's good. That's good.
He's improved. Yeah. So went back home, got a call from my aunt and said, you know what, your uncle just had a stroke. I don't think this real estate thing is going to happen for you. So I think you should basically reconsider your options. I was already preparing to wind down, and kind of move. I had a little bit of money that I had saved up and I wanted to move to the US. So I was like, okay, I'm still going to come, because while I was there, he had made a lot of introductions. Like, hey, I'll introduce you to this, that, I had met probably 20, 30 people because of him. And so I came back to Irvine, OC, realized that, there's no way. There's just no way I can succeed here with just on my own. I need somebody, like I need a mentor sort of, right? And things are just too expensive, too complex for me. I just don't understand. And at that time, I had an aunt who was based out of Katy, Texas, a suburb of Houston. And she's a school teacher, a part-time school teacher. And she called me up and she's like, look, I heard you're in the US. Why don't you come visit? I'm like, okay, cool. I'll come visit you. I'll come see what the city has to offer. But I'm really not that interested in Houston, Texas, or a suburb of Houston, Texas after looking at Irvine.
And this time you had family with you, like your kids, you had your wife? No, not yet.
My family was still back home because I needed to kind of figure things out, right? So my family's still in Dubai. I come to Katy. I realized that there's a lot of construction. There's a lot of opportunity in real estate. Maybe not big time, but and I called my wife up. I said, hey, look, I know I was supposed to be gone for 2 weeks, but now it's going to be a little longer. And I didn't have an answer. She was like, okay, what does that mean? And I really didn't have an answer. And I was like, well, it could be a couple of weeks. It could be a couple of months. I don't know. And so I remember living with my aunt at her home, doing due diligence, trying to find something to do, trying to find some type of work. Ended up spending 9 months without my family with my aunt. And that's how much time it took me to just do due diligence, not even start my business. So this is 9 months.
Due diligence on what you would do next.
Yes.
Right.
So, So of course, there's two things here, right? I'm doing due diligence on what I want to do, and I'm not spending any money because I don't want to spend any money. I'm not wasting funds, right?
Of course.
So I was living with her, eating with her, everything with her. I had a car. I put about 90,000 miles on that car in those
9 months. Wow, man. That's awesome.
Maybe a little more than 9 months, but I literally drove everywhere. I tried to figure out what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it and what the next steps are going to be. So ended up buying my first piece of land, which is when I called my wife, which was 9 months later. That's when I called my wife. I said, you know what, Sana, we're ready. I think we can do it. I've started immigration. Now, luckily at the time, my wife had a visa to come to the US. She had like a visit visa, I think. No, not a visit. She had some type of visa. So anyways, she came here. My kids were here. And then we kind of took it from there. I remember the first day they arrived, we lived in one of the residence in a hotel.
Oh my God, man. The extended stays?
The extended stays. And we lived there for a while. I want to say like 4 or 5 days. And then we moved into, at that time, what was like a furnished apartment setup. And that was like a couple of grand a month. It was like, I want to say $1,000 a month. My kids were really young at the time. And so from that furnished apartment, really, we kind of started exploring and figuring out what we're going to do next. Now, I had this piece of land, and that's a whole journey on its own, because I was under the impression that you buy the piece of land, you get leverage, and then you build. As it turns out, life had some obstacles there too, man. So, that didn't work out the way it should have. It ended up working out a different way, but, it ended up working out end of the day. So I'm glad for that. So that's kind of my journey.
God, Hamza, this is... it's kind of interesting. This is what I love about this question, man. Because people don't see the Hamza behind the success,
right?
It didn't happen overnight. You didn't know what you were going to... You could not have scripted your success. And we'll talk about your success in a few minutes. We'll celebrate it. Because, of course, now you're on the other side, where you don't have to do what you had to do before. And you're in a very different position, right? So it's kind of interesting. What I always find is that in your journey, it shows how perseverance helps. You could have easily given up, right? You could have gone back to Yemen. You could have stayed in Dubai. or you could have done a lot of different things, but you chose not to. Not because of ego at that point. I think because, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's really, you knew that there's something there. You just didn't know what. Is that how you characterize it? Or what was going in your head at that time?
So the real reason that I decided to do this, and I'll tell you what that is that I'm a Yemeni citizen. So
Okay.
war-torn country, very poor. The citizenship basically has no value, zero value. So like I think it's like the lowest 5 citizenships in the world. So if you were to rank it by citizenship, I have what they call. Now it's not my fault. I was born into it. It's not like I chose it.
Yeah.
And I grew up most of my life outside of Yemen. Of course, I went to Yemen, visited my family,
Yeah.
lived that life as well. But it's not, I don't think a citizenship should define you. And so as my kids were born, I was really happy. But at the same time, when I had to go to the Yemeni consulate to get them their citizenships, I was not happy because I had done to them what was done to me. And what that means is when they graduate, when they finish college, there's going to be no jobs for them because Yemeni people don't get jobs in the Middle East. It's not something that is common. Yeah.
I did not know that. Okay.
So either they become entrepreneurs. You will never find a Yemeni employee. That's why they're all entrepreneurs. We have a very big entrepreneurial society as Yemeni citizens, but we don't have, and it's just because our citizenship unfortunately restricts us from traveling to all these countries, and that makes it not desirable for corporations to hire us to begin with because we need to travel as the high-level execs, and we can't do that with our citizenship. There's only like 1 or 2 countries that we can go to visa-free, and so. When that had happened, and it had already happened, right? My kids were born, they were Yemeni citizens. I was like, I need to change their trajectory. I cannot have them live the way I am living or have the way I will live, right? And I want them to have this huge success and not be blocked off by a citizen. And which is weird because now I have enough money, I can buy any citizenship I want, right?
Of course.
But back then, that was my primary motive. So it was actually my kids, and not a lot of people know that.
No, that's actually amazing, man. That's amazing because I think I'm an immigrant myself, right? That was one of the, and we chose at some point we actually moved back to India. That's where I grew up, and within 2 years, and we didn't have kids back then, and we were planning for them. Within 2 years of me going back to India, I'm like, this is not where I can have my family. Not because the country is bad, it's because once you taste a different world, you're like, I want that, and I want that for my kids. That does not mean you're being non-patriotic, right? That's not what you're doing. I still love India. I still have love for it. But that doesn't mean I choose to live there. I choose to contribute.
Yeah, exactly. Look, it's not about being patriotic at all. I'm very patriotic. In fact, Immigrant Unfiltered, I promote the work of immigrants within the US. I think we have a voice and we should be heard, right? I'm just saying that if there is a way to make life easier for someone,
why not?
Why not? Exactly. If you can do it, you can work hard, get it done for them, then that's kind of what matters.
That's awesome, man. So now let's fast forward, right? So let's fast forward from you buying a piece of land. You didn't know what to do, to you doing the due diligence of over 9 months and even longer. But it seemed like real estate kept calling you, so you kept coming back to real estate, which is great. Now, from that journey today, like what does it look like? Give us some contrast, right? From you going to Residence Inn.
So let me give you exactly how that played out. It's so weird. So I first landed in Houston. My aunt says, come here, take a look. She's a school teacher, so she has no real estate background. She doesn't know, she goes to school, she comes back, and that's, a different world. So I joined this club. It's called the Rich Club, RICH, Real Estate Investment Club of Houston.
Wait, that's an actual club? Rich Club?
Yeah, okay. So I go online, find this real estate club, I join it. It's $200 a year to be a member. Now, I'll tell you firsthand, if there's a club that tells you, come join us for $200 a year, don't join.
Don't join.
Join a better one. Don't join that one. But anyway, so Rich Club, I walk in, I'm in a suit, I'm ready to do business. And then, there's a bunch of people there doing business, but they're not at the caliber that, they're maybe just getting started in life or they have a bit of money. They're not really looking to scale. They're just looking to figure their way out, or they're selling something. There's a mortgage guy, there's a this guy, there's a that guy. And they're like hyenas, they're all over the place and they want to sell.
Of course.
And so I walk in, there's this other guy, well-dressed, just like me. And he looks lost, just like I was, like, where did I come and what did I do? So I hang out with him. I remember there were 2 guys actually. And this guy, his name was Emil. So I met two people at the Rich Club. I met the engineer that I work with till today. His name is Gandhi. Same thing. We walk into like a conference, and we were both in suits, and we were like, okay, I'm going to hang out with you. And we ended up doing business today.
Right.
Okay, but so Emil, interesting story, moved here from Canada, was in the high-rise apartment space. I think he lost money or something. Something happened there. I don't remember exactly what his story was. But he wanted to develop real estate at a capacity that I had the capital for, like $400,000. It's kind of, So me and Emil, and he really took me in. He's like, hey, man, I've been here for longer than you have. Why don't you come take a look at what we're doing? So Emil moved from Canada, and me drove all over Houston, and he showed me these really cool places where you could build townhomes. So there's basically this one lot. It's more higher density area, so more infill type land. And he's like, okay, this is the product, this is the model, these are the numbers, this is the land. We buy it for 300. We build these 4 townhomes. You walk out with 300 once these townhomes are complete. This is the timeline. These are the vendors. We did all of that. Yeah. And that took us some time kind of to like figure out. And then he just left. So he taught me all of this.
Wait, he left for Canada, or he left the relationship?
He went back to Canada. And then, but he had given me all of this valuable knowledge. But towards the end, he was like, look, man, I don't think I want to do this. I'm going to go back to Canada. And so Emil went back to Canada. We kept in touch for a while, but I haven't seen him in like years. Then what ended up happening is now I had all this knowledge, wealth of knowledge for townhouses. I didn't have a hand to like hold me and tell me, hey, do this, right? So I was kind of stuck. And it's complicated, man. Like, I mean, now if I look back, I'm like, yeah, I can develop these in my sleep. But back then, it was a really scary step. Imagine you have this pocket of money and you have to put all of it in something, and you don't have a way, you don't have a, there's nothing.
You don't have the mental model, right? You know the end product, but you have no idea how to get there.
Yeah, exactly. So I ran the numbers. I know what I'm supposed to buy the land at. I know that all the contractors, but I really don't have that like push. So I was stuck. And at that point, I was like, okay, I can't do this. I need to figure something out. And so I started looking for land closer to where my aunt lived, which was out in the burbs, right? So secondary, because I always was fascinated by like commercial real estate. But also at the same time, I didn't know I was going to get into this like flex space frenzy and, do all that. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I knew I was going to buy land, and I needed that for my immigration to show immigration that, hey, I'm investing and I'm doing stuff and all of that. And I also knew I needed to have a successful business in order to process my green card, which is a whole different disaster. But anyways, so ended up buying this piece of land because of one guy, Alex Bibb. Okay, so I started driving out. I told you I was driving a lot. And I started writing down vendors. Like, okay, this is a vendor, he does roofing. This is a vendor, he does steel. And as I was driving all over that one zip code, over Katy, Texas, getting vendors, coming down, talking to roofers, erectors. And this is for everything. So roof, homes, commercials, retail, whatever they were building. My job was just to get a project manager's number or to get the company's number so that in case I get traction, I have this like database built in. So one day I'm driving by this land, and it has a beautiful sign, and it shows a flex space. Okay. And it says coming soon. And there's a picture of a flex space, and the land is flat. There's nothing on it. And so I drive it multiple times. I'm like, oh, this looks like a very easy thing to do. Maybe this is what I'll do. I don't know. So I keep driving that land. One day I see this guy in a bobcat clearing the land. And typical Hamza fashion, I get down, I wave at him. He's completely guarded because as he's clearing the land, his equipment is giving out a lot of dust.
Right.
So he's glasses and a cloth on top that's covered all the way to the bottom. I can't see who it is, right? And so he removes the glasses, he removes his outfit, and he doesn't look like a construction guy. So he looks completely different. And he's like, hey, man, how can I help you? And I'm like, oh, what do you do? And he's like, well, I'm here clearing the land. And I'm like, oh, can I get your number? So, I'm looking to buy land. If I buy it, maybe you can help me clear. He's like, oh, no, I'm the owner. And I'm like, oh, you're the owner. And he's like, yeah. So I'm like, so what is this? Like, can you explain what this picture is? You put this beautiful sign up with your number. And so he started explaining that, hey, look, I work a full-time job. I don't have time. He used to sell oil rigs. So he was an oil rig broker in Houston, and he didn't have time. And he was traveling all over the world selling oil rigs to people. And so he wanted a piece of real estate that he could just build on the side, and, it would generate cash flow and do what it was. So Alex Bibb then told me that, hey, I'm building flex space. I like it. It's very easy. And I was like, I need to be friends with this guy. So I didn't tell him I was buying land. At that point, I didn't give him any details beyond that. I said, hey, would you mind if I come and hang out with you every day? Like literally every day. Like I have nothing to do. I'll hang out with you. He's like, yeah, absolutely. Hang out with me every day. Come here. And I was like, look, man, I'm not talking about like 30 minutes, or I'm talking about like, I'm going to come hang out with you, like as you work. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. You know what? Even better, because sometimes I have site deliveries, I have things that are happening and I'm actually abroad or working. So maybe you can be my point guy. And just so you guys know, Alex Bibb is younger than me. Okay, so I'm 37. Alex is probably 33 right now, or 34. So young guy, sells oil rigs, is building his own flex space, allowed me to see who his vendors are, pick up his collections, do all of that stuff for him. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool, because I'm actually like, now I'm not talking about it. I'm actually like doing it, right? I know what he's paying. I know what's going on. I know exactly what is happening. And then based off of that, now I can kind of sort of be more confident and build my own like flex space. So hung out with Alex for about a year after, all that stuff happened. Ended up buying my piece of land. Now I had a benchmark. I knew Alex was paying X dollars per square foot because I'd done my math. I need to beat that. And I was actually beating it. Like I was actually going out there, finding vendors, getting things done cheaper, saying, hey, I have a better, just hustling my way through it. And so that's kind of how I ended up in the world of FlexSpace. Funny story is that Alex then quit FlexSpace, moved on to something else in life. I kind of continued and kind of grew that portfolio as we know it. So that's kind of really how people don't see that even I had a mentor. Like I had somebody who kind of walked me through that. And that's kind of how I grew and really was able to do the FlexSpace thing.
So it's so interesting, Hamza, right? So it seemed like you have had so many encounters where people just showed up in your life to show you a path, right? Your uncle came in, and really very few people stuck with you, not for your fault, but like your uncle came in, he showed you that glimpse, right? That this is a path possible. Something happened to him and that didn't work out, but they got you here. Then your aunt called, you lived there. Then you found this guy, Alex, and you found Gandhi, and you found somebody else, I think, in your mentorship program, where you somehow had a lot of people contributed to the pieces of puzzle, and you just had to connect them all together. It's actually very amazing when I see this is not something that you just paid somebody $50,000 to learn, or $100,000 in some cases to learn, and then you're just kind of writing that initial contribution. This is how life happens, because you couldn't have scripted meeting Alex. You could not have that. I'm going to move to US. I'm going to meet this guy who's an oil rig guy and do this, and that guy is going to show me the path. You cannot, right? So sometimes it's just you hustle, you continue doing it. Your belief in yourself is actually going to continue pushing. How do you see it when you reflect back on these stories that you've told me? How do you connect the dots?
I think I always tell my team this, and I think I do this as well, is I'll open any door and see where it takes me, and then kind of figure out from there what the next door is. Like, so no door is the ultimate door. When they say you have 3 doors in front of you and you open all 3 and one of them is going to be the door, for me, that door is the door to the next 3 doors or the next 3 doors. So I'm consistently looking for doors to open, relationships to build. And the cool thing is about all of this is that I don't think I have ever had, I've had maybe 1 or 2, but I don't think I've ever had relationships that have not lasted. Meaning everybody that has come in touch with me, or I've come in touch with them, somehow, somewhere, there's always a connection. We're always in touch. Like I said, Alex, I called Alex a few years after I, started developing, doing what I was doing. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm no longer in Flex. That was the only one I did. And then I moved on to something else.
Right.
And I was like, why did you do that? He's like, well, I don't know. I just thought that would be, a good thing. So number 1, open as many doors and they'll open more doors. Number 2, just be consistent. Stick to what you're doing. If it's working, just, make the model better.
I can attest to that, right? Our first interaction, I was going to speak at one of your events, and usually doesn't happen. You actually called me. Instead of me getting a text from, hey, Saket, doing this and that, you randomly call, and I randomly pick, because I'm the guy who will pick every single phone call. And you're the guy who will call every single person you want to call, which is amazing, right? This is how relationships are built. They're not built on texts. They're built with human touch, right? And these relationships, one of my mentors always says that you're 1 relationship away from success. You just don't know which relationship is that going to be. So treat every relationship that way. It seemed like in your life, There have been several Alexes, there's been several Gandhis, and you've treated them all not because as a transaction you want to get value out of them. It's like, how can I learn from them? And hopefully along the way I can contribute as well, which I'm sure you have. Yeah. So Hamza, you have talked a lot about flex space, right? I know that's a term that you have invented. So help us understand, what is flex space?
So first of all, let me give you the terminology and why I use flex space. So I use this software called SEMrush for marketing. It's a very popular marketing software, and it basically gives you all the gaps and what people are searching, and like it's a really good tool for anybody who's looking to market.
What is it called again?
SEMrush.
SEM. Got it.
RUSH. So really, really good platform. And I was trying to come up with something where I would be the first search term. So if I had to do, have you ever heard of how Pitbull became more famous than the actual Pitbull? Pitbull the singer.
I have not. No, I don't know the story.
Pitbull, the singer, comes up before the actual Pitbull.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, and this is something I got from him because he's an entrepreneur,
right,
more successful in business than he is in his music career. And he kind of drilled that in my mind that you need to become the most successful, even more than whatever's out there, right? So I started looking at office warehouse because that's what FlexSpace is. FlexSpace is basically office warehouses. We build a few buildings and we lease them out multi-tenant per building. So you have one building, we chop it up into smaller pieces. It's a very common product. An office warehouse, that term was so saturated on the internet that it would be impossible.
And there's no sexiness on that term. Office warehouse seems pretty boring.
And so there was no way I would be able to compete for that term and get to page one. There was just no way. There's too much product out there. CBRE is talking about it. M&M is talking about it. All the big guys are talking about how office warehouse is the next big thing. So we went on SEMrush and we found FlexSpace. I was like, okay, guys, let's look at FlexSpace, right?
So how did you come up with the term FlexSpace? Was somebody searching for it? Or did you just randomly pick it?
We were searching for all terminology around kind of sort of what the product is. So we didn't even know what the product is, right? Yeah. We knew it's office warehouses, but we had to become king of something.
Yeah.
And so we looked up FlexSpace, very weak presence on the internet, very high search volume. Perfect combo. So high search volume, low presence. So initially, FlexSpace is actually something different. It doesn't even mean office warehouses. FlexSpace is basically like a co-working.
Correct, like a WeWork or something like that, right? Yeah.
So that's kind of what FlexSpace is. And my team was like, Hamza, this is a different product. This is not even what you're building. I'm like, I don't care. It has high search.
I love that. Yeah.
I'm going to take it over. I'm going to make it something that it's not. And believe it or not, 6 months later, everybody comes, oh, FlexSpace, you're that guy from FlexSpace. Oh, yeah, I love these FlexSpaces that you build. And I love all of this stuff that you're doing. And I literally invented it from nothing just because high search, low competition, it was going to be easy for me to penetrate. And so these are strategies that I use all along in all of my businesses where we really tackle these type of things and try to figure out how we are going to move forward.
So you're now the king of flex spaces.
Yes. So basically, I'm the king of flex space here in the US, which is funny because I'm not even from the US. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that just shows you what type of opportunity there is if you just look, if you just keep opening doors. If you really think about it, the strategy that I came up with is nothing new.
Sure.
It's probably some type of entrepreneurial strategy that was used back in the day when people had to rename things to other things to make a move so that they don't have that stock or whatever it is. I don't know, So I just implemented that idea. Now, luckily, we have tools today that we can use, but just rebranded something and then sold it as my own. And now I take full ownership of it.
But I think, you may not realize that, or you may, but I want to point that out. I think it's less important what you named. I think it's more important that you had a vision, right? You had a vision that you don't want to play small. That was a key driving factor, that you could have been another Alex that I'll buy one, I'll buy two, I'll buy three. That's enough cash flow. I'm happy. Family's happy. But that would not have satisfied your appetite. You're like, how do I control this entire thing? How do I just make something so big that now when people talk about flex space, they're basically synonymous to Hamza Ali, right?
Yeah.
Which is where I think a lot of people don't do, right? A lot of people want to play small.
Yeah. But think about it, man. It doesn't cost me anything to play big or small. It's the same cost on me.
Same cost,
all I need to do is create more content, push out more content, be aggressive on content creation. Now, I can tell you that right now my full-time job is literally just content creation. That's all I do. I have teams that run my businesses. I don't really have to do much. I have to, of course, hover over them, make sure they're doing okay. But as far as operations, I don't really operate businesses day to day anymore. So all I need to do is content. And most of my strategies, even today, are number one, how do you take people out from multifamily because it's so painful and put them in flex because it's so easy. So that's my number one attack that I go on.
Right.
And then number two is just more education, free education around these industrial products. And my ultimate vision for this, I don't care about the money. The money is irrelevant at this point. But my ultimate vision is that 20 years from now, I would have moved the needle and made hundreds of people build all these flex spaces in the US. And everybody will be like, what went on in these 20 years?
Right.
Phenomenon happened that these
Hamza Ali came to the US. That's what happened.
started building flex spaces. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so this is my ultimate goal right now. I want to move the needle to where we have how we had the Industrial Revolution and whatever housing thing. I want there to be a flex space revolution all over the US. And I want to be the guy behind it. And I want to empower as many people to do it, because it's just so easy.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the direction we're going in.
So Hamza, let's actually play with that vision for a second, right? So let's say 20, 30 years from today, you're now closer to 60 years old because you told you're 38. So let's just say you're 60. What does life look for you, right? Kind of when you reflect back on your life. Of course, money is going to be there. Money is going to go up and down, right? We're not going to value life in terms of money because money is fictitious to begin with. It's the value, it's the relationships that count. So if you reflect back on when you are 60 and you reflect back on your life, what are you going to be proud of?
I think I will have been proud of doing this for fun.
Yeah.
And then I think I will also be very interested to see who's going to replace me because I'm actually working on that actively.
That's awesome.
As opposed to a lot of people who want to be the front. I love being the front. It's so much fun for me. But I just don't have what I used to have when it comes to operating and running and doing.
And in terms of when you say you don't have the energy, don't have the drive, don't have what?
No, I have the energy. I have the drive. But I would rather somebody else do it full time and me just kind of hang out in the back and just do what I like.
Well, I think you want to stay true to your mission of creating new leaders. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think 20 years from now, what it looks like is I don't even know if the US is permanent for me anymore. Kids will have, gotten their jobs. They'll be, hopefully successful in whatever they're doing, whatever their mission vision is in life. I have no intention of bringing them on into my business.
Right.
They will carry on and do whatever they want to do. And so I don't know. I could be on an island, maybe next to Richard Branson. I could be back in Dubai.
That'd be amazing.
Living my retired life. There's just so many possibilities. I could be in space. I don't know what the world is going to be like.
That's true.
Then
that's true.
But I will tell you this: that I am actively looking for a way to take now the fun role more than the
and how do you do that? How are you looking to build succession planning right here? Who is the right next Hamza, or better?
Yeah. So there will only be one, but. With that being said, right? So with that being said, the idea here is I already have CEOs for all my different businesses.
Sure.
And they do a phenomenal job running the businesses. In fact, I would say most of them do a better job than I would because they have strengths where I have weaknesses. They need a little bit of guidance, here and there. They need a little bit of a push sometimes.
Yeah.
But other than that, they're handling business on a day-to-day basis. They're dealing with, on my fund side, they're dealing with investors. They're bringing in product. They're writing deals. They're deploying capital. They're securing debt. I don't really need to do anything. It's a pretty simple model. It's running. It's good. On my mastermind side, I have a CEO. She runs, the whole thing. On my conference side, I have another CEO. She runs the whole thing. I don't really have to get involved. All I do is do food tastings and,
That's amazing.
Good, handle that, And then, of course, I have a few other things that I'm working on the tech side as well. And, my job is basically to put together the right person, the right team to run this thing and let them run. What that looks like now is that I have already, as soon as I start a business, I don't actually run it. I look for the person to run it from the very beginning.
Awesome.
And what that has done for me is that has taught me that, hey, number one, I don't have to run. I don't have to worry about succession. That's not my problem. That's their problem. And what I tell everybody who comes in is that you will replace yourself, whether you like it or not. Like, this is just the way succession goes. So everybody is trained from the very first day that, hey, I'm here, I love it, it's going to be great, but I will be the person to replace me. And as long as, so we're going through that right now with one of our companies, where our existing CEO is now looking for, because her term has ended and she needs to now hand it over to somebody else. So it's an action, and now I don't need to worry about that. So there's no real succession on my end when it comes to that type of like plan.
Which is so interesting, Hamza, because, and if you look at the world of W-2, world of employee, you're always looking at job security, right? Where you want to make sure that you're employed forever. But you're here building a culture where you need to plan your exit the day you're hired, which is very interesting, right? So how do you feel like the culture is, the people are responding to that culture? Are you able to mold people into that culture, or people are actually that way?
I think people are that way now. So everybody wants flexibility. Everybody wants a hybrid. Everybody wants balance. Everybody wants a clear vision, right? Like, where's this company going? Because look, the money doesn't stop when they replace themselves, just to be clear, right? Because all my CEOs get shares in the company. And if the next CEO does a better job, guess what? They end up making more money. So they're not incentivized by being there forever to begin with. The way I've modeled my businesses is that, hey, look, you vest, your interest vests over time. And after a certain number of years, there's really no need for you to like honestly be there, because you're vested and you're done. Now let's focus on making the business what it needs to become. By the way, it's weird that I talk to you like this, because just 8 short years ago, I didn't know what all of this was. I didn't understand this world. I was a guy who came in here, didn't know how to open a bank account, didn't know how to get a license at the DMV. And to be here I am now talking about, CEOs, investing, and like cap tables. And it's just such a huge difference from where I come from.
I think it's just really what the shows is that you were not afraid to ask questions, and you were not afraid to ask for help. And you knew where you were weak at, you knew where your strengths were, and you leveraged your strengths and partnered with others to cover your weakness. I actually so I was a consultant for businesses. I was working with CEOs to make their businesses better. And this is the common challenge that we found, because the CEOs would never want to leave, because CEOs want to be there forever. And that's what we would talk about, the succession planning. Eventually, the business doesn't need you. You need the business, understood, but the business doesn't need you, right? And when the business doesn't need you, there's a right time to you to step out and get somebody else to make sure that they can take it to the next level. Not because it's personal, it's because business is a living, breathing entity, and it needs different kind of caring and feeding depending upon you as a parent and I as a parent. We can't talk to our child the same way as they were when they were 2-year-old, when they're now 16 or 17. We have to evolve. And if we can't evolve, they're going to look for outside help, right? So it's better we change. And that's exactly what we're saying, is that let's bring a different leadership into the mix so that the next age group, whatever the business is graduating towards, they have the right parent, they have the right guidance, they have the right leader to guide them through. So Hamza, help me understand one thing, man. So of course, the path for you has, now you're actually an owner rather than an operator. But you started as an operator like most business owners do, and now you're an owner. What's next for you?
So next for me is, this year, I made it a point that I do want to spend more time with my kids. I feel like...
How old are they now?
So they are 12 and 11.
Awesome.
And I feel like they ended up growing up without me. And I also feel like they ended up raising themselves, sort of.
Yeah.
And so now I'm seeing all those effects, and I'm dealing with all that aftermath of kids raising themselves, because, parents have just been super busy. And so this year, my goal is to get more involved, to really take the family that I created, that I brought here, that I did all of this to, more seriously. Now, all of this success that I've had, financially, business, whatever it is, to me, that is not real at this point, because I accomplished what I wanted to over there. Now I need to tackle this. Now, this is not that big, because they're still, fairly young. So it's not really big. I think 2023 will be the year when I, really encompass all of that and build all those memories that maybe I skipped out on. And then 2024, I want to be able to enjoy, hopefully, if everything goes well, scaling these multiple businesses, but while sitting on the sidelines. So I don't know if like this is a normal thing, but I actually prefer sitting on the sidelines than and having competent people run the company than actually being involved and like doing all of that. And every time I talk to people about this, that hey, I actually, I kind of like sitting on the sidelines and do what I do. But then also, I think sitting on the sidelines means different things to different people.
Correct. You're not sitting on the beach drinking pina colada, sing every single day. That's not what you're like. That's not what you're describing sitting on. You're still involved. You're still involved. You're still guiding them. You have a different role to play to grow your business and leverage. You've created leverage in all your businesses, right? That's what you're doing. Because there's only one Hamza and you can only be one place at one time because the model you have, you can grow.
Yeah. So, people I look up to, crazy life, don't really sit on the side. Don't really know what sitting on the sidelines is like. But that's something that, my thing is I need a benchmark and then I need to do better than them. So, or whatever I think is better than what they're doing. So I'm kind of like using them as benchmarks and seeing where that's taken them and then trying to do something, a little different.
Yeah. Well, Hamza, you're a true inspiration to me, my buddy. It's kind of like when I hear your story, when I talk to you, you still have a spark. Life hasn't beaten you yet, which is amazing. I mean, it's not like they didn't try. You didn't let it beat you down. Yeah. Right? So you definitely had different challenges in your life. So Hamza.
Look, FlexSpace came out of a necessity for me because I needed immigration. Then I kind of turned that around and realized that, hey, I could build them as good as retail, as good as any, like I could make them look very appealing. Yeah. And then what I realized, at a larger dollar amount, I could sell them to institutional equity. And which was very strange. I didn't really know that institutional equity is buying multi-tenant industrial product. That didn't exist, by the way. And then once I realized that, and I got approached by like 2 companies, I was like, really? You guys want to buy multi-tenant FlexSpace? They're like, yeah, we'll buy everything you got. I'm like, what do you mean? Like literally you build it and we will buy it. And I was like, okay, hold on. What cap rate will you buy it at? And they're like, what cap rate do you want to sell at? And I thought I was being really slick. And I was like, 6 cap. And they're like, done. We'll buy it at a 6 cap.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was like, hold on. Now you're telling me that I have buyers before I even build. Mm-hmm. That built a lot of confidence. That grew my ego.
Of course.
I sold 2 deals to buyers that told me that they would buy, and they bought. They hound me every day. I'm still in touch with them because they need leasing assistance and they need other time. So I'm very like almost like involved in that world, to where I have all these buyers sitting and they are like, Hamza, when are you building your next one? And I'm like, I just did. And they're like, yeah, we bought that one. When are you building the other one?
Will be the next one, yeah.
Like, well, that's going to take 2 years. They're like, yeah, could we put an LOI out on it? I'm like, well, it wouldn't be fair to my other buyers if we did that, right?
Correct.
And so I don't think that's worth it. So they're like, I think that is really what convinced. So having that security on the back end is what convinced me to do this on the front end. Mm-hmm. I don't think I would have been as aggressive if I didn't have that security on the back end. Because look, end of the day, I'm a risk taker, yes, but those risks are very calculated, Right. And although I look like I'm this guy who's just talking FlexSpace, the thing is, I have my buyers now sitting on the sidelines, ready to invest. And that is kind of what has filled me with, yes, I can do it. I can sell. I've sold it twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, whatever it is. I can do it much more at a much larger scale. And they're still waiting. They're like, yeah, just give it to us. We want it. And at a 6 cap, it's like a no-brainer. It's like you build them at like a 15 cap, you compress it down to 6. You're walking away with so much equity. You're like, it doesn't even make sense to hold it at that point.
So Hamza, can everyone be that fortunate or blessed to have these kind of buyers at the tail end? Right? Is that a normal occurrence, or you just ended up being lucky? How does that work?
What I would say is, no matter what your business, right? So in my case, it's FlexSpace. In your case, it's VC. Whatever your business is, don't try to do it on your own. Meaning, find somebody who's done it, tried and tested. Find somebody who's successful. Find somebody who's in a place where you want to be, even if it's after 10 years. If you find, so in today's world, when I say all these things, go find this person, go find that person, go find this person, everybody's like, okay, where do we find them? Like, you went to Rich Club. We don't have a Rich Club, bro. It's like social media.
There's so many options.
And you can reach out to actual humans, actual people. Correct. I have reached out, my podcast, we've reached out to people who have millions of followers who have said, okay, Hamza, we want to talk to you. Why do they want to talk to me? I don't know. I just reached out to them, right? Yeah. Could it be because they backtracked and saw all my content? Possibly. Could it be they know who I am? Possibly. Could it be they're interested in learning about FlexSpace? Possibly, but who knows?
Possibly. Yeah.
My job is and we reach out to probably, no joke, at least 20 to 30 people a week for my podcast to schedule them.
That's awesome. Right.
And based off of that, we make a decision. Now we're picking. We're like, okay, this guy has 10 million followers. This guy has 4 million followers.
Right.
This guy, we want this. And this is a strategy that I'm using because I need the famous guys to create fame by association.
Of course.
And then once I do that, then guess what? Then I don't need the famous people anymore. Then I can get into more of like whatever it is that people want to hear. Point. So the idea is that, number one, leverage social media. I do every day. I spend 4 hours a day on social media, different platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, just educating myself. So if you look at my feed, it's all education. It's none of that garbage. I don't need to take that. I get a lot of inspiration from that, number one. And then, of course, number two is physical, right? Also, build those relationships. Don't be shy to pick up the phone and call people. Don't take things personally. The first meeting I had in this country, I remember it was with an industrial developer that Gandhi introduced me to. The guy, I would have said his name, but it slips my mind now. The guy literally told me, Hamza, go back to where you came from. You're not going to be successful in this country.
Holy crap.
Yeah, that was one of the first formal meetings that I took with a developer. And after realizing that I'm a small guy and, because he heard Dubai, he assumed money and investments. And after realizing that, hey, this kid doesn't know what he's doing, he's like, bro, just go back to your country. You don't know what you're doing. You're not going to be successful here. And I was shocked. I was like, what? But guess what? That fueled the fire.
Of course. You want to prove him wrong, right?
And so now I have a chip on my shoulder. Not a bad thing.
Sometimes it's not. I mean, most time it is, but in this case, it's not.
Yeah. So I would say just do whatever you need to do in the time that you have allocated to do those things. And that's kind of, kind of what success looks like, whatever that is for you.
Yeah. Man, Hamza, this is amazing. I could talk to you forever, dude. You're an amazing guy. And thank you for being who you are. As a man, forget about a businessman, as a person, I think you're an amazing human being. So
Absolutely.
stay that way, man. So towards the end of our show, man, we ask two questions. And we always end with that. One is, of course, you'd had interesting life. I would not call it easy, but a very productive life that you have built your own legacy around, right? Which is amazing. But going back when you were a 20-year-old kid, right? When you were trying to figure life out, if you were to go back to that kid and tell them one thing, what would that one insight be that's going to make their migration in the life more intentional?
I think it would be two things, grit and consistency.
Yeah.
And I think, and they go hand in hand. But if I was to pick one, okay, to be more specific, I know they're kind of intertwined, but the one thing I would tell you is be consistent. And if you're going to do something, think about this, man, out of everybody in my family, 38-year-old Hamza has, 300,000 followers on social media.
Right.
How do you think that happened? I have teenagers.
Not by accident.
Yeah, I was just consistent. I was like, hey, look, I got something. I can post. Just post, right? You want to learn about, securities market, start a fund. Well, how are you going to do that? You got to be consistent. You can't just give up halfway. You really need to follow through, really need to understand. And today's world is just so much different from when I got started. Believe it or not, I talk about as if I'm old, but 8 years ago, we had Facebook.
Yeah.
And you had to be consistent on Facebook. Instagram was a thing, but it wasn't really a thing. These many groups, it's unlimited. The amount of damage you could do. And that's what we had. Those were the tools that we had to work with, right? Just by being consistent, one thing could open a world of doors for you, right? And in anything, of course. Now, I give you all these social media references because I think they are the lowest hanging fruit today for a lot of people.
Agreed.
Low. It's free. You can post as much as you want. Twitter's not going to come after you and tell you, hey, we don't like you posting 20 times a day. Facebook's not going to come after you and say, hey, I talk about social media. But you can take that in anything that you do. Because before social media, it was all physical. Just be consistent. Show up, And someone's going to dangle a carrot in front of you. Someone's going to throw some leads your way. Someone's going to help you out, along the way. We don't want you posting in, and just enjoy that.
Correct. No, I think I always ponder, it's a good thought experiment. Why are people not consistent? Right? Because everyone knows consistency is the key, right? Be it diet, be it health, be it relationship, be it your work, be it your business, whatever it is. I often ponder, I think it's really because their why is not too strong, right? Yeah. Their why is weak. And if you don't have a strong enough why, you're not going to be consistent. Because today, starting anything is very easy. And you know that. It's do you follow through it? And the only way to follow through is be consistent no matter what's happening in your life, no matter how many walls you have to crush. And the only way you can get that fuel is to have a bigger why. Like when we do our goal setting, me and my wife, we're like, what is our why? So if you don't have a why, money cannot be the why. I mean, it can be a starting fuel, but at some point you're going to have the money that you can't spend in your entire life.
So
right?
To discuss that in a little more or in a different way, right?
Yeah.
I tell all my whole team that if you are not the person, go find the person and team up with them, because they have weaknesses where you have strengths, and they have strengths where you have weaknesses. Go find me that person. Don't tell me I can't, or it doesn't work, or it doesn't happen. Go find the person who is not you, and I want you guys to work in tandem now instead of you working on your own. Now, this is something that me coming from Dubai, I was younger, a little more egotistical. I didn't want to work with other people. I'm like, I will do it on my own, and I am going to show the world, and But very quickly, and I know you're cut on time, but I'm going to just quickly put this point.
So take your time, man. No rush. This is an interesting conversation.
I was actually in the multifamily space. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Multifamily space here in Houston is controlled largely by the Indian diaspora. Okay? So they control it, they dominate it. It's pretty well known. And so what would end up happening is, as I would be bidding for deals, as would they. Now, they are, of course, much more wealthier than I was at the time. And it's all family owned. It's not a syndication. It's not a fund. So they can make a decision like that. Right? And I kept losing these deals to that family because I would bid, they would bid higher. Right? I have to think of my IRRs. They don't care about IRRs.
They don't. Right? Yeah.
They just want to hold it, and it's probably, somewhere, it's going to work out. So one day, as I was always upset because I would end up losing deals. But one day I got a deal. Okay. And I get this deal, and I was the highest bidder. Obviously, I got it because I was the highest bidder. The broker threw me. He's like, okay, this guy's been on my head. I need to sell something. Let me sell this piece of real estate. It was a very desired asset and a very nice piece of property. And he threw me the lead, and he's like, Hamza, you know what? You've been after me for so long. I'm going to give it to you. Put it under contract. As I'm celebrating on my table, in my office table, I get a call from the gentleman's son. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so now I had just put it under contract. I'm getting ready to syndicate this deal. I'm thinking of who's going to be the investors. I'm putting the whole deck together. And this guy calls me and says, hey man, congrats on your deal. I'm really happy that you got it. I think you're the right person for it, and you'll take this deal to wherever it needs to go. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And remember now, I'm upset at these people because they keep buying all the other deals, right? And so he said, I want to invest in it with you. And I was like, what?
That's interesting.
And he's like, yeah, I'll invest. You're open for syndications, and you're like, you have a structure and all that.
Yeah.
Now, as an LP, he walks out with more money than I would, right? On his cash. I would walk out with a bit of money. And he's like, yeah, I'll just fund the whole deal. I'll be your LP. I'll sponsor the debt. I'll get it done.
The single LP.
Yeah, one LP.
Look at that, man.
So now here I am holding a grudge for years against an individual, and this individual simply picks up the phone and calls me and says, hey, I'll be your LP and I'll fund your deal. What do you think? And that is the day I think I realized that this I mentality will not get me too far in the world. Whoever, whatever I think I am, there's always going to be somebody who can just...
Somebody better. Yeah.
And then, believe it or not, we end up becoming friends, and that friendship grows.
That's awesome, man.
And then
Did you ever ask him why he wanted what drove? Because I have a feeling it's because you showed up every single time, right? You were along with them, so you didn't give up.
I didn't give up, and as we build a friendship, they never checked up on the deal. So we bought it, it cash flowed, sold. Once we sold, we parted.
Everyone's happy, right?
Everyone was happy, and easiest person to deal with ever. They sponsored the debt. I didn't have to do anything. So, and the splits were in their favor. So they ended up walking away with most of the money. But my point is that there are so many different ways to do business. Yeah. And now what I'm learning is that I want to be in that position. If somebody else is succeeding, I'll be like, hey man, I don't mind being an LP in your deal, or I don't mind doing this, that, or whatever it is. And you end up making more money that way.
Always with less effort.
Exactly. With less or no suffering. So that's definitely something that, I learned. And so now the I has gone and the we's here, and which is why I have so much peace, here. And
that's awesome, man.
This is kind of how I operate now in this space,
Well, I don't see any stress on your face, man. If that helps. So, this is amazing.
I don't stress out too much. Look, of course, there's a struggle, there's hardships,
always.
Every single day, and there's challenges, there's hurdles, there's people that you have to deal with, and sometimes you just don't. But I don't see a reason for me to discuss that outside of just myself.
Sure.
It doesn't spread any type of knowledge. It doesn't spread any type of information. It doesn't really give anybody what they want. You know what I mean?
No.
And it's very easily resolved or solved. So then why dwell in those buckets when you have this shiny carrot dangling in front of you?
Correct.
I'm basically that. How they tell you don't chase the shiny ball. I chase every shiny ball. Or carrot or whatever you want to call it, And it's just fun. For me now, it's come to a point where it's fun, and I'm going to keep doing that until, I find my place in life and then figure that out.
You know what? You'll find your place, and then you'll figure out that place is not yours, and you'll find it. Knowing you'll never find that place because it doesn't exist for anybody, not just for you. So our last question, Hamza, what is your vision, desire for humanity to migrate to? We've talked a lot about your vision, your path, your successes, but if you want to take it not one person at a time, but humanity as a whole, where would you want to take it?
I think humanity as a whole is very much herd mentality, right? There's a lot of noise today in the world. There's a lot of things that are going on that take up a lot of people's time, whether it's politics, whether it's news, whether it's this or that. And I think that takes away a lot. Whether it's, if you're invested in stocks, you want to know what the CEO is doing. There's just so much pollution on humanity. And I see that getting worse because, I'm in the social media space. So this 30-second, 15-second, and move on. There's even more. And this is not going to stop. I would love to see this pollution stop, but it's not going to stop.
No.
So if I had, one thing to say, it's that just take some time away from the pollution and just really try to understand what is going on in your life, and how you can create change, whether that's big change, small change, medium change, immediate change, whether it's helping out your family, uncles or aunts, or just maybe your neighbor. And I think if people operated at that level as humanity, any damage that is inflicted because of the noise would get rebuilt in a matter of months. Because the reality is the noise is never going to stop. The damage is never going to stop. I could say that we need to be strong and all, but it's just not going to happen. It's something way beyond us and way beyond anybody else, really. And I don't want to be that guy who envisions himself at the top, telling people to So I would say just small wins every day and, just take care of the people around you. And really, I think if everybody does that as humanity, everybody kind of, is built better, stronger.
Awesome, man. Hamza, my God, man, this is one of the best podcasts I've recorded because you've added so much value, man, so much value. And it's I'm listening to myself talking, which is even better, always, right? So this is a fluid conversation, effortless conversation. Yeah, which is perfect. Those are the best kind of podcasts. So Hamza, I am pretty sure at this point, somebody wants to talk to you, right? Within my audience group. Yeah. How do they get in touch with you, man?
Yeah, so easiest way to get in touch with me would be, of course, through my social media, TikTok, Hamza Invests, Instagram, Hamza Invests. You can DM me there. I have a team that, filters all of those through and then reaches out to everybody who's trying to reach out to me. Or you could just email me direct, hamza@hamzainvests.com. You could even go to my website. There's a form you can fill out, and that gets also sent to me directly. So those are all the ways people can reach out.
Awesome. And don't be surprised if Hamza actually picks up the phone and calls you if you give him your number, because he may do that.
Yeah, I may do that. Yes, I'm definitely a phone call kind of guy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, Hamza, again, really thank you for being on the show, man. I know this took longer than we had anticipated, but the conversation is beautiful. I didn't want to cut it short. So thank you for staying with us. Thank you for adding your insights. Again, thank you for being the human you are. Right? You're an amazing human being. You're inspiring a lot of people. Continue doing that, man.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, man. I really appreciate all of that, and I appreciate you having me on this call today. And it was really fun. I really just enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you, buddy.
If you got value from this episode, you might consider sharing this content with a friend. But most importantly, be sure to take action on what you've learned. One way you can take the next step is to connect directly with Socket on an investor call. That link is waiting for you in the show notes below.
The content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. Please consult your own advisors when making any investment decisions. Keep listening. We'll see you on the next episode.